It didn't end with victory. It ended with burial. Hope was placed behind a stone, closed, hidden, gone from sight. Because sometimes, faith doesn't feel like believing. It feels like waiting. Waiting without answers. Waiting without signs. Waiting while heaven stays silent. Saturday doesn't shout. It doesn't explain itself. It just sits between what was lost and what hasn't arrived. We stand over the soil and wonder, did we miss it? Is this the end? Is the promise gone? But buried does not mean finished, because what is planted is not abandoned. Under the surface, something is happening. The seed breaks. Roots reach where no one can see. Life begins its quiet rebellion against the grave. And when the soil finally parts, it's not loss that rises. It's life. The tomb was never the end. It was just the beginning. What went into the ground didn't disappear. It rose again.
Time he is risen. That's pretty awesome. It's great to see you. Happy Easter. I am so glad that you're here. That's an old tradition. People wonder, why do you do that? It's an old tradition from early in Christianity when the church was being persecuted. They would walk up to somebody, and in the sand, they might draw a picture of the fish, you know, the ones you see on the back of cars sometimes. And they would say to the person, he is risen. And if the person said back, he is risen indeed, they knew they were talking to a Christian. If not, they weren't. So it was kind of an early church code just to say, am I talking to a Christian or not? And it's one that we've picked up and carry forth, particularly on Easter, all the time. So one more time, he is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Amen. Going to do something a little different today. If you're new, this isn't going to be different. It's going to be normal. But we're going to do something a little different today. As you can tell, no TV, no music stand, nothing. I don't have a bunch of notes. I've got a little half-page thing here in case I get lost in this conversation somewhere. But I just want to talk today. I just want to have a conversation if we could. A few weeks ago in staff meeting, I remember, I don't know how we got there, but at some point I just made the comment to the team. I said, actually, if you knew that Jason, and I was referring to the Jason of 30 years ago, if you knew that Jason, you would not have liked him very much. You would not have enjoyed him. You wouldn't have been friends with him. He was not a good guy. And I remember the staff actually kind of looked at me and they said, you know what, in 10 years of you being here, I don't think we've ever heard your story. What is your story? And they all began to push and challenge me because I have 8 and 9 women on my staff, and that's what they do to me all the time. Just pray for me. Just pray for me. But they challenged me, and I kind of was wrestling with that. But like a lot of things, I can shove that to the side. It's Easter. We got stuff to do. And then Bob gets up last week, and he says, who needs to hear your story? Thanks, Bob. So, you know what? You know when you're hearing from God, and there comes a point when you just have to step out in obedience. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about my story today. I don't enjoy talking about it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't like a certain period of my life. I don't like talking about it. I don't like to talk about how cool I think the devil is. I'd rather talk about Jesus and the Bible on there. But I realize that there's power in understanding a story. And I will tell you, I believe my story is an Easter story. And that's why we're going to talk today a little bit. If you have hung out with me for any amount of time, you've probably put the pieces together that I grew up in an incredibly strict home. My parents put the fun in fundamentalism, and they were strict. Church was every part of our life. It was Sunday morning. It was Sunday night. It was Wednesday night. My dad was usually at visitation on Tuesday night. Church was not a casual thing. We went with a starched shirt, a tie, polished shoes, and your King James Version Bible, because any other version is an apostasy, of course. on that. But that gives you kind of a sense of how it was for us. In our house, there was no rock and roll music allowed. You could not. We did not have cable TV because the devil broadcast there. And at school, if they played rock and roll music or something questionable, my mom had an agreement with the teachers that I was to go outside. And so I have memories of me sitting out in the hallway in school while they were inside doing something. My parents kept me out of the gifted program, even though the teachers wanted me to be in it because they taught evolution. So do you see, you kind of get a sense of what that upbringing was like, extremely strict upbringing. But I want to be fair too. My parents are amazing people. They are godly people, and they planted a seed in me of Jesus that, as you'll find out later, the Lord grew, and I'm appreciative of it. But very, very strict home. By the time I got to 17 or 18, I began to just really start pushing away from faith and walking away from it. A couple different reasons. Number one, because yes, there's a piece of me that is the prodigal son. There's a rebellious side. I was a teenager and was pushing that direction. But the other part, it took me years to really put the pieces together on. I realized that I had been shown a lot of religion, but not a whole lot of grace growing up. I had been shown rules and regulations, but I had no idea what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And the problem was I had been taught the Bible, I had been learning, so I'm reading in Scripture, and then I'm seeing this thing in the church and where we were at and the community we were in, and I couldn't reconcile the two. I'm like, these seem like two very different things. And so I made the fateful choice to just walk away from it all in anger. I flicked God the bird, I flicked the church the bird, and I'm not going to pretty it up because that's exactly what I did. And I walked away. But I didn't just walk away nicely. I walked away angry and bitter and cynical in the process. If you were a Christian at that time, I'd be more than happy to tell you why I thought you were a complete idiot. And I knew enough about the Bible to make the argument. I was mean, I was hateful, and I was angry. I would spend 8 years of my life completely apart from God. First 4 were particularly bad of that time period. I have a lot of minister friends out there, and after 25 years of ministry, I've accumulated and met a lot of pastors, and a lot of them have a similar story. It's different in each case, but their story goes something like this. Somewhere in their teenage years, they answered a calling. For whatever reason, it always seems like it was at youth camp. I don't know why, which is a good reason to make sure your kids go to camp this year. But for some reason, it always kind of seems like it's in youth camp. But so this person then goes off to Bible school. Somewhere along the way, they meet their wife. They start having kids. And when they graduate, they go off to the local church to begin serving a congregation. That's a lot of people, a lot of pastors around me's story. And I've always been really jealous of that story because mine couldn't be any more different. I didn't come to ministry and answer a calling that way. I came from a very different direction. And those 8 years, as we started it, I walked far, far, far away from the Lord. And I did a lot of things that I regret and wish I hadn't done. Same stuff many of you have probably done. Drugs, alcohol, sex, pornography, name the list. And it was all there. When I talk about drugs, though, I don't talk about doing drugs as much as it was the manufacture and growing of drugs. I should be in jail. My friends and I grew it, manufactured it, sold it. It was dumb. Along the way, I would meet Christy, thank goodness. But her and I would cross boundaries we weren't supposed to cross as well. And we knew better. If you knew that Jason back then, you'd know he was a mean person. The Lord called me into ministry right around 22 years old. And we don't have time to tell the whole story. It's a pretty funny story, but I clearly rejected the calling at that time. And it wasn't because of my rebellion or my anger. No, I actually had a plan. I knew what I wanted to do with my life at 22 years old. I had a business plan. I was locked and loaded and ready to go. And I knew the goal. The goal was very simple. I wanted to be a millionaire, multimillionaire even. And Christy's told me, so I can speak for her in this case, she was totally on board with that. She was totally cool with that. So you can imagine a few years later when I tell her I'm going into ministry and they don't make very much money, she had her own little journey to go on after that as well. But I did. I ended up going into business with 3 other people in Atlanta, Georgia. And the business took off at first. We didn't get a lot of money because we were funding the growth of it so quickly. It was growing so fast, we were internally funding it. But in the long term, it would have probably paid off. We went from 0 to 2.5 million in sales in 2 years. It was doing very well. But while that was going well, one other part of my life was drifting, and it took me years later to really realize it. While the business was taking off and doing well, my marriage was drifting. I worked very long hours, workaholic, 6 days a week. I left the house very early in the morning and I came home late at night. On the way home, I drank myself drunk until I got home. 45-minute drive. I have memories of passing out on the couch with my dinner still on my lap. Christy and I didn't see each other very much. She worked at that time as well. And she may not agree with me on this, but I've been pastoring long enough now, 25 plus years, that I know a lot of the signs of a marriage that's drifting and deteriorating, and we were checking off a whole bunch of boxes. If we got into an argument or a fight, I was mean as sin. And I was cutting. And there are things I have said to her in the heat of the battle that I have spent 25 years apologizing for. I don't think we would have made it. I don't. I just don't. There were too many boxes we were checking off. And it's only by the grace of God and the grace of Christy that we did. The Lord would find me one morning. Like I said, I get up early, so I got up early, and someone had borrowed my truck the day before, and they left the radio on a Christian station. And I could just audibly sense a voice saying, "Keep it on. Listen." I have no idea who the pastor is, what church it is. I just know, I remember it was somewhere in Florida. That's all I know. But as I was sitting there listening on my way to work, I found myself in a parking lot at Home Depot bawling my eyes out. Believing absolutely I was not alone in the truck. And God saying, "Jason, I wasn't kidding when I was calling you into ministry. I have a better plan for you. I have a different path for you to go on." My prayer there in the truck was nothing special or unique. No big words or churchy things to say. It's about 8 words and 3 lines. "Here I am, Lord. Use me. I'm sorry." And come to find out, God doesn't really care about the words. He wants a repentant heart. And God would use that. Now, I'd love to say I was completely transformed in that moment and everything was rainbows and unicorns after that. But that's not how any of our journey goes, is it? But it was that moment where I finally stepped into His will and His ways that He began to chisel away those things in my life that needed to go. He took an angry, mean man with a hard heart and He gave me a heart of flesh. Love to say I've always gotten it right, but I haven't. It's been a journey, oftentimes of 3 steps forward and 1 step back. But I've tried to keep my trajectory to Him the entire time. And that's ultimately what it's about. Why bring that up today? Why on Easter? We've been in a series called Fear, He is a Liar. And what I want you to know is this. Fear whispers into my ear too. Fear talks to me as well. And as I wrestled with it and really asked, why haven't I shared my story? I realized that down deep there was this idea, this lie that I had accepted. That if you guys knew my story, you wouldn't take me seriously. You would think less of me. That my kids wouldn't like me. And I think there's a bunch of people out there that have a different version of that lie, or maybe the same one, I don't know. But it's a lie that says, If you only knew what I've done, where I've been, what I've said, you would hate me. And here's what I want you to know today. That is a lie from the pit of hell. God's grace is bigger than any problem you may have. If he can take a mean, angry, bitter man and restore him, he could do the same for you. If there was one verse that I think encapsulates this entire series, this entire journey we went on, it's this one. It's from 1 John. And it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Why? Because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. Fear has to do with punishment. What does punishment mean? Punishment means you owe something. There's a debt that needs to be paid, an infraction. But what we learned this Easter is that perfect love came down. It says, you owe nothing. The debt has been paid. Fear has to do with doing, earning. And perfect love came down and says, oh no, it's already done. The cry from the cross is, it is finished. It is done. There is nothing you need to do. And that's what I want you to know. This is not a yay Jason story. This is a yay God moment because there's nothing I did. The only reason I stand here is because Jesus walked out of a grave. That's all I have to brag about. And he can do the same thing in your life if you will let him. His calling to me was a very simple calling. He said, come. And that's the same calling he gives you. Come. No matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, my grace is big enough for your problem. The only thing you need to do is come. So I'm going to keep it short today. You're welcome. And you say, well, I don't know that I've had this supernatural moment like you had in your truck. But if you're feeling stirred today, maybe I'm that pastor on the radio for you today. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm that voice. Maybe this is that moment for you. And maybe you just need to say that same prayer I said. It doesn't have to be full of churchy words and religious things. You don't need, here I am, Lord. Use me. I'm sorry. With a repentant heart, you will honor that prayer. And he too can take an acorn and bury it. And he can grow something new and unique. Easter says that what goes in the grave comes out better on the other side. That with every death there can be a resurrection through Jesus Christ. The grave and the victory said that there is new life. I'm not finished with you yet. I have another story for you. Come. You can have new life through Jesus Christ. And I just want to give one other last disclaimer. When I talk about growing up and turning away from Christ, I want to make sure you understand that that is not a story of victimhood. I'm not a victim of my growing up. As long as you are blaming other people and other things, you don't need salvation. Salvation began for me when I began to own my sin, my problem, my bad decisions. I'm not a victim of my upbringing, and I'm very thankful for my upbringing because like that acorn in there, my parents put Jesus in there, and when I finally hit rock bottom and got to the end of myself, all I had left was that seed that they had planted in my life. And for that, I am enormously grateful. I knew where to go home. God can take that seed and transform it into something new. If he can do it for me, he can do it for you. And so I encourage you to step into that. That first step might be you saying, I own it. In my life, on the trajectory I'm going, my sin, my problem, my bad decisions. And we stop blaming other people and other things in our lives. And we take ownership. And God can use that to transform you. I praise God and I thank Him every day for His salvation and His grace. That's all I have. I thank Christy for hers. She's a woman of great patience, as you know. If you think you've got to the end, if you think it's hopeless, if you believe the lie God can't use you, I invite you today to meet perfect love. His name is Jesus. And He loved you so much, He came down and He paid a price on the cross that was yours to pay. And He rose from the grave to show that you can have new life through Him. My prayer today is that you can start with that simple prayer. Here I am, Lord, use me. I'm sorry. And if you pray it, I want to know about it, okay? Let's pray. Dear Lord,